This is the METS POSTCAST, your instant game reaction for the New York Mets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The New York Mets erased a 6-1 deficit for their largest comeback win of the season, and just like that, have retaken control for the third and final wild card spot in the National League. Welcome in to the Mets Postcast here live on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel. You can also listen to us in the Locked On Mets podcast feed. I'm your Postcast host, Chris Schubert, here with you recapping a Mets victory, a much-needed Mets victory. They got the help that they needed in Cincinnati. Pittsburgh Pirates, shout out to you with that 4-2 victory. The Mets win tonight. They are back in front with a one-game lead with 5 games to play. The story, our lead story tonight on the Postcast, the Franciscos.
This is what you'll be talking about.
How about Francisco Lindor setting the tone early for the Mets in this one? Leadoff home run on the second pitch of the game. Had 3 RBIs in total. He had the solo shot to start it. Had a RBI ground out to make it 6-2. Had the single that at the time gave the Mets a 7-6 lead. So set the tone in that one spot. And it was Francisco Alvarez in the 8th inning with a go-ahead 2-run home run. He almost had the moment over the weekend against Washington on Sunday. Got the moment here tonight. You saw the emotion. And what more can you say about the turnaround this year for Francisco Alvarez? The kid was demoted down to AAA Syracuse because he was not able to help this team offensively. He was just lost at the plate. They sent him down. They called him back up. And since he's been called back up, you can make the case he's one of the 3 best Mets hitters that they have had. And oh, by the way, he's doing it with injuries on both of his hands. I mean, everybody else needs to be reminded about what this kid was potential-wise late or early on in his career, and he is starting to reach that potential. And just what an awesome moment for Francisco Alvarez. What an awesome moment for this team. Ricardo says, best win of the year. You betcha. I mean, think about how all of us felt coming into this game tonight. Think about how all of us felt when the Mets were down 6-1 in this game. You could see it. You could see the postseason flashing in front of all of our eyes. Even though the Reds were losing, you were just going to run out of time. There were only going to be 5 games left after today. But the Mets showed fight in this one. They battled back. It was a 5-run 5th inning, capped off by a game-tying 3-run home run from Brandon Nimmo. And you just love to see that after losing 2 of 3 over the weekend to Washington, feeling pretty down in the dumps, understanding that this is a bit of an uphill battle considering who you play, who Cincinnati plays, that you can't tie them. You have to outright beat them. You go down 6-1 early. You come back and you win this game and you cap it off. They're showing it again right now on my television screen. Francisco Alvarez with that absolute moonshot to give the Mets the lead. Edwin Diaz just with an incredible 6-out save. We'll get into more of that as the game, as the show moves along. The Mets gave you their best effort tonight in terms of a comeback win. They showed you that they are going to fight over these next 6 games, now 5 games after tonight. They are not just going to roll over and give this 3rd wild card spot to Cincinnati or to Arizona. And Brent says, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is one game fair. But you saw a fight tonight. They could have very easily rolled over. They battled back, and they now have the most important thing. They have control now. And we'll get to it a little bit later on with the stuff to keep an eye on. But advantage Mets going into the next couple days here compared to what Cincinnati's going to be up against. The Mets have taken control back, and now they can dictate this. They don't have to scoreboard watch in Cincinnati anymore. They can just control it on their end if they just keep on winning. And tonight certainly got that ball rolling, and it was the perfect start to this week for the New York Mets. We have to talk about the way Carlos Mendoza managed tonight. I think he deserves a lot of credit and a lot of praise for the way he approached this game We do need to have a conversation about David Peterson. We have to talk about the other stuff to keep an eye on. We'll give you an update on what's going on in Cincinnati or what happened in Cincinnati, what's going on in Arizona. We will get to all of it here on the other side. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it isn't just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. The NFL season is here. FanDuel making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, if you bet just $5, your bet wins. How about $300 in bonus bets to use across the app? FanDuel has it all. They've got the player props. You can build that same game parlay. You can jump in live as the action unfolds. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or you're keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Back here in Mets Postcast, Locked On Mets YouTube channel, Locked On Mets podcast feed. Chris Schubert here with you, recapping a 9-7 win for the New York Mets, and the top line takeaway with a Reds loss in at home to Pittsburgh. The Mets are back in control of their own destiny, and in large part because of the aggressiveness from Carlos Mendoza. And I think, at least I tend to take the approach of trying to fairly criticize Carlos Mendoza, give him praise when I think he makes a good move, criticize him when he makes a move that I don't think necessarily was the right decision. I thought tonight was about as perfect as you could get from a manager, because he showed very early on in this game that he understood the magnitude of it. He understood that the Mets did not control their own fate tonight, that they needed to kind of create their own luck. And he didn't have any qualms about down 5-1. I'm taking David Peterson out of the game in the second inning. And even though I'm going to use my bullpen a bunch tonight, and it may not matter because we're down 5-1, I need to keep this game right here. I need to give my guys a chance. Every bullpen decision I was totally fine with. I know there's some criticism of when he used Rogers. At that point, you're running out of options. You got to turn to your high leverage guys. I'm not sure any of us wanted Ryan Helsley in the game in that spot. He utilized the guys that he had at his disposal. He used Edwin Diaz for a third consecutive day. And oh, by the way, he used Edwin Diaz for a 6-out save on the third consecutive game in which he's used Edwin Diaz. I mean, if that goes to show you that this is a manager treating this like a playoff game, treating this like it's a game 7 of a World Series and I need to win this game, absolutely did that tonight. I mean, you got to tip your cap to basically everybody out there in that bullpen. Oscar Brazaban got it started, and the Mets finished it off with Edwin Diaz there in the 9th inning with that 6-out save. And it's their biggest comeback win of the season so far. I know they're still waiting for that win when trailing after 8, but you'll take this. You'll take this because it puts the Mets back in control. And again, just managed aggressively. And it just goes to show that when these things matters, Carlos Mendoza had a really nice feel of it. And so if this team is able to get into the postseason, if they are able to finish it, could be a little confidence booster for everybody involved here. The team, Carlos Mendoza, you and I watching the team at home, because I thought it was a perfectly managed game tonight. I mean, I thought he did a great job of understanding, listen, it's the second inning. I got to get Peterson out of here. He just doesn't have it. And we'll transition to that because David Peterson, his spot is due up on Sunday. And for all the praise I just gave Carlos Mendoza for how he managed tonight, he'll lose all of that praise if David Peterson makes that start on Sunday. And I know, think about the juxtaposition of this for just a second, because it was the Sunday of the 2024 season David Peterson on the mound for the Mets, needing a win in that game to set up the Monday doubleheader to mean something for the Mets. And David Peterson went out there in that game when the Mets needed him to in the final series of the year. David Peterson delivered the gem that the Mets needed. Fast forward a year later, the final series of the year, David Peterson is not pitchable for the New York Mets. Time can fly. A lot can change in a year, and that's exactly where the Mets find themselves. David Peterson cannot pitch for this team over the weekend. He cannot make that final start. I don't know necessarily what you do. Tomorrow it's Jonah Tong. It's Nolan McLean on Thursday. You're going to have Brendan Sproat go on Friday. You're going to have the piggyback on Saturday. I wonder if they split the piggyback, if we Uno reverse card and we split those guys and it's Clay Holmes one day, it's Sean Manaea the next day. I know McLean starting on Thursday sets him up to start game one. Do you consider McLean on short rest there on Sunday? I mean, all options need to be on the table if that game is the be-all, end-all. If it is win and in, if you need that game, you're going to have to approach it aggressively, and it absolutely cannot include David Peterson starting in that game. And you hate to say it because he was so critical to what this team did last year, and he was so important to the 45-24 start to this season. But Ricardo makes mention of it. David Peterson is in Kodai Senga territory right now, where I don't know if he can even be on the playoff roster. And you're not going to start him. He's not going to be one of your three starters. Certainly can't be. And I don't know if you can use him out of the bullpen. So I just don't know what he gives this team right now. Since the All-Star break, he has been a shell of himself. It's been even worse since the middle of August. And again, I don't like talking bad about David Peterson because he was so important to the run that this team had last year and the start that they got off to this year. But you just have to face facts. He is a net negative for this team. Got taken out in the second inning tonight. Just hard hit balls all over the place. So if that game matters on Sunday, hopefully the Mets can take care of business here over the next couple of days to make that not matter. They can get some help out of Pittsburgh. They can get some help out of the Dodgers here the next couple of nights against the Diamondbacks. And perhaps Sunday doesn't matter. And you can let PD make that start. And hopefully he can use that as a potential confidence booster. But the Mets are going to have to consider all of their options for that game on Sunday if it does matter. And it may include bringing somebody back on short rest. It could include splitting Manaea and Holmes and having one of those guys go. I mean, everything needs to be on the table for this team if that game matters. The stuff to keep an eye on, another managing aggressively note that I didn't mention earlier. How about Brandon Nimmo in center field? They put Marte in left. They put Nimmo in center. They basically just said, we don't care about defense tonight. We need to score runs. We need to have offense. So we're going to, for the first time this season, put Brandon Nimmo in center field. We're going to put the ageless wonder, if you can call him that, Starling Marte out in left. And the Mets were sloppy tonight. McNeil made a couple of errors. That certainly led to some runs. It wasn't pretty defensively, but the Mets decided to throw caution to the wind and say, you know what? We need to put every single good bat we have in the lineup, and we got to try to just slug our way through this. It worked tonight, and I'm sure you'll see the same 9 tomorrow. Although, before the game, some rumblings, some rumors of a Tyrone Taylor return here, and it could mean Jose Siri or Cedric Mullins is removed from this roster. Or maybe Ronnie Mauricio, although I don't think the team's going to want to carry 3 outfielders like that on the bench. Mauricio does at least provide some positional flexibility defensively if they need it. But they could get Tyrone back, and then if they want that defensive avenue, they certainly have it out there in center field. And Tyrone was swinging a pretty hot bat before he went down with that injury. And look, you just need to keep on trucking, right? The same approach that the Mets had tonight, they need to have again tomorrow. Mendoza has to manage just as aggressively, treat it the same. Just because you're up a game now on the Reds, just because you now control, this is where you can now extend that gap and really put pressure. I mean, you win tomorrow, and let's just call it like it is. The Reds have to face Paul Skeens tomorrow. So they lost tonight. They have to face Paul Skeens tomorrow. If they lose and the Mets pick up a win with Jonah Tong on the mound, you're looking at a 2-game lead with 4 games to play. If you manage it aggressively, you can put yourself in pole position. You can create that distance. Now, they got to go out there and do it. They could just as easily revert back to the team that we saw over the weekend against Washington. But, man, they checked all the boxes tonight. The bullpen was excellent. The manager seemed to have just a great pulse on the game and making the right moves in the right moments. The team showed fight, big hits from the Franciscos, the big hit from Brandon Nimmo. Every single starter got a hit in the game. I mean, it was just everything that this team needed tonight. They got in a big way. And hopefully it is a confidence-boosting victory that their heads can hit the pillow tonight, and they'll know they have a one-game lead over the Cincinnati Reds going into play tomorrow, and they are back into controlling their own fate. And Ricardo brings up a good point. It's Paul Skeens, Hunter Green. It is a pitcher's duel there, but it's not going to just be easy for Cincinnati to get the win back from last night. And if you keep on winning, doesn't matter what Cincinnati does. That's how important taking advantage of tonight was for the Mets to put themselves back in control. Max asks if the Mets will call up Dylan Ross for tomorrow. We'll see. The one thing I've learned under a David Stearns Mets team is there are a flurry of roster moves always around the corner. There's always a flurry of moves that they can make. And with Tyrone Taylor potentially coming back tomorrow, there may be a couple of moves. They may try to get a fresh bullpen arm in because they utilized so many guys tonight. So we'll see how aggressively they choose to approach that. But bottom line, the closing message that we have here, the Mets won tonight, the Reds lost. Diamondbacks are in action as we speak. Let's do just a quick scoreboard update before I leave you here tonight. The Diamondbacks started the day one game back of both the Mets and the Reds. Dodgers currently up 1-0 in the sixth as we wrap up here on the postcast. So a world where the Mets have a 2-game lead over the Diamondbacks with 5 games to play. So could potentially put them more in the rearview mirror. But the Mets back in control of their own fate, back in control of their own destiny. Now they just have to go out there and do it. It is Jonah Tong tomorrow for the Mets. 5 games remaining, a 1-game lead. We knew it wasn't going to be easy when the week started. Just buckle up. Buckle up here for the next 5 days, because while tonight feels good, while tonight was a fun feeling watching that comeback happen and reminding you of what this team can be, these are the New York Mets. They tend to make it a little bit more difficult than it has to be. And so I'm chuckling, but I kind of anticipate it not going as swimmingly the rest of the week and it being just a little bit more stressful. But we'll be right here after the game tomorrow, after Jonah Tong makes that second game of this series against the Cubs, to break it all down here on the Mets Postcast. Do me a favor, if you are new here to the program, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so that you are notified when we go live here after the Mets conclude tomorrow night. If you're listening to us in the podcast feed and you want to join us live, the moment the Mets game is over, join us on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel for instant reaction to the New York Mets in action tomorrow night against the Chicago Cubs. The Mets, they come back trailing 6-1 in this one. They defeat the Chicago Cubs with a Reds loss. They are back in control of their own fate for that third and final wild card spot in the National League playoff picture. Their largest comeback win of the season, Francisco Alvarez with the big hit, the go-ahead 2-run homer there in the 8th inning. Just an awesome way for this night to end with Francisco Alvarez giving the Mets that big hit to give them the lead late. Now they got to go out there and do it again tomorrow to keep putting pressure on those Cincinnati Reds. Until then, have a good one, Mets fans.